Hey, it's Andrew Downs. I've been thinking a lot about Iowa football since Saturday's loss in the Cy-Hawk game, and not so much about the loss itself, but about what the way Iowa played says about the state and the future of the program. We learned two things for sure. Mark Gronowski, not the guy we hoped we were getting. Not to say he's not a good person or a good quarterback. I think he's a better quarterback than Cade McNamara or Deacon Hill or Spencer Petras, but he's not the game-changing quarterback that we thought we were getting. He's not a guy who can make the big play or lead Iowa on a big drive in a pivotal moment. He's not worth the reported $2 million that it took to get him here. He's not Rocco Becht. And whether that's because of an injury or his mentality or the scheme or the receivers, I don't know, but he is not what we were hoping we were getting. The second thing that we learned is this idea that Tim Lester has full control of the offense, that he has the reins, that Kirk Ferentz has let go. It's just not the case. That was a Kirk Ferentz game. We've seen it for 5 years, arguably a lot longer than that. Way too conservative, uninspired play calling, and a total unwillingness to take necessary risks. This is, and apparently always will be, Kirk Ferentz's offense. So this loss isn't on Gronowski or Lester. It's squarely on the shoulders of Kirk Ferentz. And that brings us to a pretty uncomfortable conversation. The way I'm approaching that conversation is through two analogies. And I want to preface all this by saying I'm not calling for Kirk Ferentz to lose his job. And I say that because it's going to sound a little bit like at times I'm calling for Kirk Ferentz to lose his job. The first analogy is Fran McCaffery's tenure, specifically the end of his tenure as Iowa's men's basketball coach. I was among the most ardent Fran defenders out there, and that's because I could rationally justify most of his failures and the program's failures for other reasons. We don't need to relitigate all of that, but going into last season, it was clear this is the year you need to show us that the program is headed in the right direction. Halfway through the season, it was clear it wasn't headed in the right direction. A change needed to be made. Thankfully, a change was made. Well, coming into this football season, this was the time. I was able to rationally justify much of Iowa's issues over the last couple of seasons and say things are going to be different. A new offensive coordinator in his second season, another highly paid transfer quarterback, a revamped receiving room. Things needed to be different. Well, 8 quarters into the season, things are not different. Fact one is Iowa's offense needs to change. Fact two is that Iowa's offense won't change with Kirk Ferentz in charge. And that leads us to fact three, which is the only way to change the offense is to change the head coach. And that brings us to my second analogy. Kobe Bryant was my favorite basketball player of all time, but at the end of his career, he wasn't good enough to lead the Lakers to a championship, and the team couldn't build itself into a contender while Kobe was still there. The decision was made that it was more important to let Kobe end his career on his own terms than to revamp everything, make major changes in the hopes of winning. As a fan, I was okay with this. Kobe brought us 5 championships, hundreds of wins, countless memorable moments. And so if we had to sacrifice a couple of seasons so that he could go out on his own terms the way he wanted, that was a trade-off I was happy to make. He had earned that. Kirk Ferentz has brought us hundreds of wins and countless memorable moments as Hawkeye fans. If we have to suffer through a few rough seasons, losing to our rivals, that's a trade-off that I'm willing to make. He has earned that. That also means I need to change my expectations for this program and the way I go about watching these games and these seasons. The goal can't be compete for a Big Ten championship or get to the college football playoff. That's not happening with the way things are currently, with this current offense. So I will try to enjoy however much time we have left with Kirk Ferentz. I will celebrate the milestones like later this week when he becomes the Big Ten's all-time winningest coach. I'll appreciate the more than quarter of a century of sustained success and being led by a truly great man, more than a football coach. I'm proud of Iowa football under Kirk Ferentz, and I always will be. And when he decides it's time to go, he will go. He has earned that. That's not to say I won't be emotional every Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, I can't control that part of myself, but I will keep things in perspective, and I will realize that we're experiencing the end of an historic career. Lastly, for those who don't remember, Kobe gave us one final moment. In his final game, he scored 60 points. It was a memory that I will cherish forever, and the memory of that night far outweighs any of the memories of those last couple of seasons. Can Kirk Ferentz give us one more classic, vintage, upset win on his way out the door, whether that's later this year or another time? I certainly hope so. I will be right here when it happens, cheering on the Hawks. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. I needed to do that. And as always, go Hawks.